Mr. Root's definition of libertarianism is. I believe that everyone is a self-identifier. Only you get a right to hang a label on you. So it's not up to me to determine whether somebody else is a libertarian. If they want to call themselves a libertarian, that's their business. But you know, I mean, you can call yourself a ballerina, but if you can't dance, everybody's going to know you're not a ballerina. So it's much more about, it's not about what we say, it's not about what we call ourselves. I encourage people to live a libertarianism as a way of life. Libertarianism is much greater than a political philosophy. The Libertarian Party is the political arm of the libertarian larger movement, the only political one. I mean, if people want to vote for liberty and freedom, this is their avenue. But it's not the whole of libertarianism. My father raised a libertarian. He never knew what the word was. Never heard of the Libertarian Party. Of course, I was born before the Libertarian Party started. I'm not sure my father's ever voted. But he raised a libertarian. He raised somebody to know how to mind their own business, and not be sticking your nose in everybody else's business, and to take care of yourself and not expect a government agency or someone else to take care of you. That's what libertarianism is all about. It's the way you live your life, the way that we show other people what libertarianism is, in the way that we live our lives, the way that we walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So, you know, I know it's kind of unfair to your question, but I hesitate to compare my type of libertarianism to anybody else. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one kind of libertarianism. Let's all be libertarians. We got to stop hyphenating ourselves. You know, we've got this radical faction and this reformer faction and the whatever they call themselves. We're not large enough to be chopping ourselves up into smaller groups. I mean, everybody hangs a radical. I mean, everybody likes to hang a radical tag on me. They say, Lee Wright's a radical. Well, nobody ever bothered to ask me. Nobody bothered to ask me if I was a radical reformer. You want to know what I am? I'm a radical reformer. I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to radically reform things. If you want to call somebody, ask them. Don't just put a label on them and then expect them to live up to that label. Let's all just be libertarians. That's all we need. We don't need all these different factions. That's why I like this Stop All War message. I believe that it is a message that all the subgroups of the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement, all of us can coalesce behind this one idea, that it's wrong to continue to bomb people halfway around the world just because they might do something to us at some time, somewhere. That's not how it works. Like I said, you go to jail for that. Of course, government's pretty good about doing things that if we did them, we'd be in prison or in jail, and they do it, and there's some legitimate reason why it's okay for them to do it, you know. So I'm just hoping that this can be a unifying effort, that we can bring all libertarians together and realize that we just got to be libertarian. Yes, sir.
If you were president, what would you do about the 20+ million illegal immigrants in America?
Well, I'm not sure the president can do anything about that. That's a matter for Congress, unfortunately. That's just like, you know, presidents get up there and they say, I'm going to cut your taxes. How many times have we heard that from a president? Well, the president's telling you something he can't do. He doesn't have the power to do it. The duties of the president are pretty well developed. Domestic issues, which I would consider illegal immigration to be somewhat of a domestic issue, those things are relegated to Congress. Now, if you're a foreign policy person, then the president's your guy. That's where his forte is. The budget and foreign policy are his two biggest things. Controlling the money and where we send our troops, where we fight and where we don't fight. So I would encourage Congress to make it easier, certainly, for immigrants to come to this country. One of the biggest problems of illegal immigration, I saw a Stossel report, matter of fact, on this. If you are from India and you have a PhD and you want to immigrate to this country, it takes you about 5 years to go through the process. If you are a migrant worker from Mexico and you want to go through the system, It takes you 130 years to go through the system. Well, is there any wonder that they're swimming the Rio Grande and trying to sneak across here? Nobody's got 130 years to wait around to make it legal. I mean, the immigration problem is a good point in that here's an area where government regulation has made things worse. It hasn't made things better. It hasn't protected us at all. It's made things worse. So, I mean, make it easier for people to come here. This country was built on immigrants in the first place. Hardly any of us was here when we kicked the Indians out. We all came from somewhere else with good ideas and built businesses and built a great country out of people from somewhere else. No reason for that to stop. Now we have to, we've got to keep the criminals out. We've got to keep the armies out that would do us harm, of course. But most people that come to this country just want to work. They just want a better life because America is the place for a better life, or at least it used to be. If they only knew how we were now, I'm not so sure that so many of them would want to come here. So I think the best way to take care of illegal immigration is to reform the regulations that we have now, make it a little easier for people to get in, and they won't be so, so inclined to try to get here illegally. Yes?
I want to go back to the ballot access
Oh, of
that
course.
you worked on a lot. And turning the tables, they've set this bar at a certain level because of administrative costs or because of the confusion it would create.
Because they want to.
Right, because they want to. Is there a way to turn that table? Has it been tried? Because I'm very young and new to thinking about these things. Turn the table and say, we have 2 to 3 million people in Arkansas. There is no way 2 parties can represent those people. Could we make a case for requiring the state to keep 5 parties on the ballot at all times that meet specifications?
Have at it. That's a good idea. I
The
mean,
answer is yes. In Arkansas, we've got the initiative, okay, $100,000, and you can change the Constitution.
$100,000.
$100,000 is what it takes to put an amendment on the ballot like the food tax amendment. And you could put an amendment on there that says the state of Arkansas ceases to exist, and the governor's got to go live in a trailer.
well, and of course, another thing
Then I'll
you
have
can,
to talk to you.
another thing you can do is be vigilant and watch for your opportunities. Now, what happened in North Carolina, as I told you before, at one time North Carolina was the 3rd hardest ballot access state in the country. The only way we could retain ballot access is if we achieved 10% of the vote for either president or governor. North Carolina never did that. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down ballot access law in North Carolina involving independent or unaffiliated candidates. He said the law was unconstitutional and directed North Carolina legislators to rewrite the law. We've been lobbying for many years that it was just as onerous for us to have to get, any third party. So we piggybacked on that, and we jumped on it, and we lobbied, and we already had things going. We had, 1 or 2 lawsuits where the Libertarian Party of North Carolina sued the state of North Carolina. And as a result of that, when they rewrote the law, they rewrote us in, lowering the 10% to 2%. And the first time they did that, our governor candidate, Mike Munger, garnered more than 2% of the vote for the first time since I had known. North Carolina retained ballot access because we were on top of it. We were already in, having conversations with the legislatures there, and you'll find that, not all Democrats or Republicans are going to be against you in this ballot access fight. There are freedom-minded people in those parties as well that believe you should have a right to vote for whoever you want to. I wrote a paper one time. It was called Choices, the Metric of Freedom, and I believe that. You can gauge how free you are in every situation by how many choices you have. It's a shame that you can go to any local car lot and have more freedom than you can in the ballot box. You can go to McDonald's and have more freedom than you do in the ballot box. Are you really free? Do you really have a choice if the only people you can vote for are the ones that the government says you can vote for? Is it free just because you get 2 to choose from instead of just 1? Well, we know not, because we're going to get the same kind of government from Democrats or Republicans. I don't quote Pat Buchanan very often. But Mr. Buchanan said, the Democrats and Republicans are two wings on the same bird of prey. That is absolutely true. And as I said before, there's one area where they will always unite, and that is keeping us off the ballot. So be vigilant, keep your eyes open, and be ready to seize every opportunity that they give you, whether they mean to give it to you or not. Be ready to seize on that opportunity. Yes, sir.
Just an observation. I like the way you answered his question about immigration, and that you said, it's really not I can't make anything happen. That's up to Congress. Isn't that going to be the challenge for any kind of presidential candidate or particularly libertarian? They're just going to be nailed with specifics. The press and other people are going to go, yeah, where is specifics? But I think that's the key, where you kind of say, I can't do, that's not something I can do, but I have opinions about it, and it's perhaps someone else's, and I think that will ring true with people.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback because it's true. I mean, I'm a historian by nature. I mean, that's my college degree is in journalism and history, double major. So I studied history all my life, and that's what kind of drove me to get involved in politics a long time ago. Was I saw presidents making promises that I knew they couldn't keep. They had to know they couldn't keep them because it wasn't in the power. Every time George Bush said, no more taxes, I knew he was lying. I knew he was lying because the president don't have anything to do with taxes. That's Congress. I'm not going to go out there and lie to people to try to get them to vote for me and tell them I can do something that I can't do. I'm going to try to give an honest answer like I did to him. I can't do this, but I will encourage this to happen. And I think that's the way that libertarians need to start doing things. We don't have to. We don't have to make things up, and we don't have to do politics as usual. We don't have to make promises we can't keep. And we show them that we know what we're talking about, that we did our homework, when we can give them an answer such as what we're talking about. So I appreciate that. Yes?
I'm kind of new, so I was just wondering, like, you were saying, here's what I feel about it, but it's not something I can do about it. Does tagging me on and anybody who stands up here at a podium and tells you that they can is lying to you violate the non-aggression statement?
No, I don't think so. It's hard for me to turn a lie into an act of aggression. But it's certainly an act of fraud. And we're just as opposed to that as we are the non-aggression principle. I mean, force and fraud, those two often go right together hand in hand. I mean, they're just like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, dum-da-dum-da-dum. Here's force, fraud can't be far behind. Or here's some fraud, well, force has got to be, at least in the next room or something. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, let's be truthful. There's nothing wrong with the truth. We have a wonderful truth to tell, and I love telling it. I am thrilled to be able to tell libertarians, but other people especially. I mean, you'd be surprised. Look around you, this no war thing. Look around you at the young people. I feel like I'm in the 60s sometimes. There's peace symbols everywhere, on every piece of clothing they wear, the jewelry, tattoos. They didn't have tattoos back in the 60s so much, but they got them now. And I'll tell you, speaking as a child of the 60s, this is another reason why this is so dear to my heart. I grew up during the Vietnam War. I grew up scared to death, afraid every day of turning 18 years old because I knew I was going to have to go to a terrible place called war. No child should have to grow up that way. Nobody should have to live that kind of fear. I mean, I watched it on, we only had 3 channels back then. And every one of them showed the body bags coming in every day. And they had correspondents in the field showing the firefights. I mean, I know it didn't scare all the kids, but it scared the heck out of me. And it changed my life. Now, oddly enough, we got out of Vietnam about 2 years before I turned 18. I turned 18, I joined the Air Force.
Turned 17, joined the Navy.
But I wanted to go to college. And the Air Force presented me with a way to go to college. But I also found a way to serve my country without ever having to harm a soul. I was a medical services technician. I was a nurse, basically. So I was able to actually save some lives. But it also gave me a different look about war. I mean, I grew up with the war, and I knew how it was to be afraid of going to war. But I saw the after effects of war when I worked the wards in the hospital. I saw what war does to the minds of young men. Robs them of their future. turns them into something that they never would have been.